Allie, what do you think about us living just the two of us without having any children?
What?
Well, you were concerned before about not being able to take care of me if we had kids, right? If we don't have children, that problem goes away.
I was utterly astonished at my self-centered husband. He had picked up on my hypothetical concern about not being able to tend to him if we had a child, and now he was proposing just that. He had a knack for bewildering me with his actions. To make matters worse, he had a tendency to complicate things when I was already in a tough spot. I should have never gotten married. And I was filled with regret. My name is Allie Brown. At the age of 27, I was a working housewife welcoming my first year of marriage. I lived with my husband, Ethan, who was 2 years my senior. We had met 5 years ago at a mixer where Ethan was incredibly kind and gentlemanly, which quickly charmed me. On their dates, he always thoughtfully planned according to my preferences and paced things to my comfort. Trying not to be outdone, I also strove to improve myself. Before meeting him, I had set goals to live independently and become a self-reliant woman. Until their marriage, I believed Ethan shared my values, but I soon realized their thinking was fundamentally different. His many flaws had been hidden, only meeting once a week for dates. Living with Ethan brought his troubling traits to the forefront. His clinginess became pronounced. During their courtship, his needy behavior appeared occasionally, but I mistook it for jokes, failing to see his true nature. In the mornings, he would act as if he couldn't leave the bed, whimsically requesting.
Allie, I wish you'd wake me up.
And at meals, he'd ask to be fed. Even during dates, he'd cling to my arm and not let go. I don't recall marrying a man with such dependent and childish behavior. His excessive neediness made me suspect marital fraud. When I started to keep his distance, he would probe.
Hey, Allie, did you by any chance start to dislike me?
Trying to gauge my feelings. It's not that I dislike you, but I'd prefer if you didn't talk in that whiny voice. I answered.
Why, Allie, do you dislike someone like me? Was it just my looks that you liked?
Ethan would sometimes look dejected and accuse me as if I had a bad personality. It was infuriating to be treated as if I were mean-spirited. I had been charmed by Ethan's gentlemanly behavior during our dates, never imagining his childish side would become so apparent. He had been courteous and kind on our dates.
You know, my mom always taught me not to behave inside the house like I do outside.
I couldn't hide my surprise at his words. His conduct on our dates was based on his mother's advice. Was that all an act?
Yeah, I thought you were happy as I gradually showed you the real me, so I believed you had accepted me.
Hearing this made me feel guilty too. I had enjoyed what I thought was his natural self, assuming it was all in jest. I found out even the plans for our dates had been orchestrated by his mother. Knowing I was being manipulated by my mother-in-law made anger rise within me. Yet, I harbored no blame towards Ethan. After marriage, understanding his true character and my own withdrawal caused me to reflect. Everyone dislikes having their essence negated. Even if Ethan had a childlike personality, that was who he was. Having chosen to marry him, I realized I should make an effort to understand and accept his individuality. I proposed several changes to Ethan. It's okay to be pampered sometimes, but from now on, I want you to do things you can manage on your own. That includes getting up by yourself in the morning. Choosing and wearing your clothes on your own. During dates, I'd like you not to cling to me. Also, I want you to share in the household chores. It's too much for me to handle all the housework on top of taking care of you while I'm working full-time.
But isn't that just normal motherly stuff?
What? Even if I tried to compromise, as long as Ethan said things like this, there was little hope for progress. It seemed he wanted to treat me like his mother. I'm not your mother. If we have a child, I won't have the capacity to take care of you as well.
Really? But if you get pregnant, you'll quit your job, right? Then you'll take care of me more, won't you?
That's not going to happen. If we have a child, you'll need to manage on your own. If you don't like that, divorce is also an option. That's fine, okay? I stated him firmly and did not accept his rebuttal. After that, he restrained his childish behavior for a while. But about a week later...
Hey, Allie, let's just stay the two of us without having kids.
What's that?
Listen, Allie, you were talking before about how it would be difficult to take care of me if we had children. So I was thinking, maybe we don't need kids. I've always been trying to figure out how you could take care of me while raising a child. But in the end, I think we're just tied down by the social expectation that we should have children once we're married.
I replied calmly but with a firm resolve. But I do want children. Ethan responded with a surprised look.
But you know, I did some research and found out that parenting takes a lot of effort. It's really tough.
I emphasized with deep conviction. No matter how hard it is, I believe the joy of having one's own child far outweighs that. I want to be a mother, no matter the challenges we face. Ethan exclaimed, seeming at a loss.
Do you really think so?
I sighed internally as I saw a sudden sparkle in his eyes. No matter how hard it might be, I have no interest in taking care of you while raising a child. When a child comes into this world, you'll need to become a responsible father. It's time to graduate from your childhood and take on some adult responsibilities. Ethan nodded with a hint of dissatisfaction. Your father is known as a craftsman, right? He answered with a tinge of melancholy.
Yeah, so he was always away from home, and Mom always felt lonely by herself.
I probed deeper. Did you dislike your father? He replied, shoulders drooping.
Right, I'm not too fond of him. He's always stern, complains about Mom pampering me even though he's hardly home. We talked a bit at the wedding, but haven't had much conversation since.
Then all the more reason you need to strive to be a reliable father. My words didn't seem to resonate with Ethan. Shortly after, a call came from my mother-in-law. Ethan had apparently consulted me about something.
Allie, please don't be too harsh on Ethan. He's had a tough time. I've always raised him with love, so he wouldn't have to face hardships. Don't force your ways on him. Being kind to Ethan won't cost you anything, right?
But that leaves me with no personal time. I wanted to argue back, but held my tongue, not wanting a futile argument with her. For now, I decided to let it pass and have a serious discussion about our future married life with Ethan. However, he didn't seem willing to change the current situation and looked satisfied. This might be the end for us, I couldn't help but think. We had strived to build an ideal family with a polite and mature Ethan. Had I been wrong to have such high ideals? One day, Ethan started to speak with a hint of hesitation.
I've decided to go with some friends on an overseas trip during the next long break. It's going to be a 2-night, 3-day stay in Thailand.
Then that will be a perfect opportunity for you to refresh. I myself felt the need for some space from him, so this was convenient. During that time, I plan to go back home and think things through. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I just want to relax a bit. You should also rest while I'm gone. You can't relax when I'm around, can you?
That's not true. But I will be a bit lonely by myself. So I've decided to go back to my parents' place. And then, he was busy preparing for his overseas trip. He was getting his passport and buying the necessities for the journey. Meanwhile, I had been feeling a bit off recently but was carrying on with daily life. However, the day before Ethan was to leave, I was struck by severe abdominal pain. The pain was so intense I couldn't move, rendering me unable to act on my own. Fortunately, because I collapsed while shopping, there were people around to quickly take me to the hospital. It wasn't serious enough to require surgery, but I was nonetheless forced to be hospitalized for a week. My parents came right away and tried to contact Ethan, but they couldn't reach him. They even called his workplace, but it was past leaving time, and no one could be reached. I also sent several calls and messages, but there was no response. In the meantime, my parents went to my house to gather the necessary things for me. Ethan finally got in touch around 9 p.m. that night, and it was to my smartphone.
Hello, I got a message from your mother. Did something happen?
Something did happen. I've been hospitalized.
You're joking, right? Is this some sort of revenge because Mom scolded you? Dragging your mother into this. You're quite something, Allie.
This is not the time for that kind of talk. Anyway, I'm in the hospital right now. So I need you to come here tomorrow.
Oh, I see. This is you testing if I'll change my plans to take care of you, right? I won't fall for that tactic. Rest up at your parents' place.
Wait, just a minute. But he hung up the phone unilaterally. I couldn't believe it. He decided everything based on his own interpretation and treated me as if I were cunning. And what about his actions, trying to use his mother to manipulate me? In reality, I was undoubtedly in the hospital. Having no other choice, I sent him a text message with the name of the hospital and my room number. As expected, he didn't show up the next day. Calls didn't go through. Maybe an international call would reach him. Trying to call through WhatsApp, The ringing went through, but there was no answer. I discussed with my parents about his unbelievable actions. It's unbelievable that he would go to Thailand and leave me here hospitalized.
It's a terrible situation. He wouldn't believe that you're in the hospital.
But we haven't confirmed if he actually went to Thailand. How about asking his parents?
I hesitated to contact his mother. She would surely take his side, and I would be the one blamed. But I didn't have much experience talking to his father, and although I knew his phone number, I was unsure whether to call him. At that moment, my mother stepped forward and said,
"I'll do it."
and called the Ethan's father from my smartphone.
"Hello, this is Ailey's mother. She is in the hospital, and we have informed Ethan, but unfortunately, he doesn't believe us. We hadn't been able to get in touch with him at all today. We heard he was planning a trip to Thailand with friends, and we're worried he might have already left with them."
After she finished talking with my father-in-law,
He said he's coming right over.
soon after, my father-in-law arrived at the hospital room.
I apologize for the trouble my son has caused. But did you not contact my wife?
I was asked by him and explained. Actually, I had been scolded by your wife over a matter regarding Ethan before, and I hesitated a bit this time. There was a slight change in his expression upon hearing those words.
I see. I didn't think we had caused you such inconvenience. My family has been rude, indeed. Such sudden hospitalization must have been very worrying.
Yes, but my parents were with me, so it was all right.
Normally, it's Ethan's role to be by your side at such times. When I get back, I'll have to speak with him and ensure he's re-educated properly.
I felt a little relieved at his reaction and saw him bitter smile. Unlike the impression of him that Ethan had given, he was extremely polite and respectful. He might be putting on an act like Ethan, but upon closer observation, his sincerity came through. The next day, whether scolded by her husband or not, Ethan's mother came to apologize.
It was my fault for spoiling him. I'm truly sorry. It's wrong that I ended up being blamed one-sidedly.
No, understanding is all I ask for. I hoped this reconciliation would be the first step toward improving our relationship. 4 days after my hospitalization, if Ethan was indeed in Thailand, it would be the day he was due to return. I expressed gratitude that my father-in-law, who usually worked on holidays, had taken a special leave to visit me. My father-in-law visit was to ensure that if Ethan contacted him, he could direct Ethan to my hospital room immediately. The flight information suggested that Ethan would probably arrive around noon, and I was eagerly awaiting that time. Despite his repeated attempts to contact Ethan, there was no response from his son. I also tried calling several times, but got no response. Amidst this, I received a call on my smartphone from an unknown number. With hesitation, I picked up the phone. "Hello, who is this?"
Good afternoon, this is Parker. I'm Ethan's supervisor at work.
"Oh, Mr. Parker, good to talk. I hope all is well with you."
Well, Mrs. Brown, I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news. Ethan has been in a terrible accident and has passed away.
The news made me feel as if time had stopped. "What do you mean? Where did the accident happen?"
We were on a trip to Thailand with a group, including Ethan, and on our way back, we took a taxi from the airport together. After we dropped, he was involved in a traffic accident on the taxi.
Shocked, I dropped my smartphone, which my father-in-law picked up and handed back to me. "Where is Ethan right now?"
He's in the general hospital.
I realized that it was the hospital near my own medical facility. I quickly finished the call, explained the situation to my father-in-law and hospital staff, and got permission to leave. We then hurried to the hospital next door. As I went, I was tormented by regret, thinking I should have been more tolerant of Ethan's childish nature and that we should have talked more. Though I had complex feelings when I discovered his true character, I never despised him. There should have been many opportunities to start over. But at that moment, it seemed all those possibilities had vanished forever. I cried profusely in the car on the way to the hospital with my father-in-law. He had informed his wife of the situation, and I was filled with worry. We rushed to the hospital reception and I asked, "Where is my husband, Ethan Brown? He's in the morgue, right?" The staff member looked surprised.
Ethan Brown? He was brought in earlier, but fortunately, his injuries were minor, and he's been cleared to go home. You must have been worried about the accident. Please be assured, he's just waiting for billing now.
I received the staff's kind smile and realized the previous call was false. Shaking with anger, we hurried to the waiting room. Ethan was standing there, waiting to settle the bill, laughing with someone who appeared to be his boss. Filled with rage, I approached Ethan and showed my anger openly. Enough with the jokes. We're done. Don't ever show your face to me again. With those words, I walked away.
You better deal with this situation properly. Be prepared.
As I walked away driven by my anger, the pain in my abdomen grew worse. Once back in the room and lying down, my father-in-law kept repeating his apologies.
I'm truly sorry. It's our fault that our son has acted so foolishly.
Father, please don't apologize anymore. Just understand that I've decided to divorce Ethan.
Of course, if that's your decision, I'll accept it. I'll talk to my son properly.
After a while, Ethan showed up at my hospital room.
Allie, were you really in the hospital?
I responded coldly to Ethan's insensitive words. I contacted you multiple times and we even spoke on the phone. You never believed me, but now you finally accept the truth.
I had no idea you'd be here with Dad. He called me, and after checking your messages on WhatsApp, I came here.
His father gave Ethan a stern look.
What's this all of a sudden?
I came to visit.
The anger in his voice was palpable.
Do you think what you've done can be settled just like that?
Ethan was visibly shaken.
Oh, what do you mean? Did the manager say something? Oh, Actually, I asked him to do that. To tell Allie I was on a trip so I wouldn't keep me from going. I thought I'd play a big joke in return.
I said, without so much as a glance at him. What about the accident? Ethan started to speak, clearly confused.
The accident really happened. When I was talking to the manager on the phone, the taxi I took crashed into the roadside. I screamed out loud, and they took me away in an ambulance. But it was just a scratch, no broken bones. Everyone was just shocked by the impact.
I responded coldly to his words. Yes, you were lying, but my abdominal pain is real. Just seeing you makes me feel sick. So, don't ever come near me again. Ethan tried to argue in a panic.
Why? The problem is you won't accept me. I just want to be myself. Being told to grow up or to be a proper father if we had kids, I just want to be pampered.
At that moment, Ethan's father grabbed him by the collar.
If you didn't understand the meaning of marriage, you should never have married in the first place. Do you have any remorse for the trouble you've caused I? We were told you had died. You can possibly understand the pain we felt. Someone who acts with such irresponsibility is no son of mine. Get out of this house right now.
When his father let him go, pale-faced Ethan let out a yell.
Mom.
Yelling out, Ethan scrambled out of the hospital room. It was clear to me that trying to accept even a part of his true nature had been a mistake. Ethan seemed to have faced a harsh reprimand from his parents afterward. It turned out that Ethan's actions had also provoked his mother's anger. The usually calm his mother had unleashed my fury for the first time. His father had already told her that Ethan was supposedly deceased, and she had rushed to the hospital afterward. When Ethan's mother learned of his minor injuries from the staff, he had already arrived at my hospital room. Still, she had been desperately calling and searching for him. Although I couldn't help feeling sympathy for his mother's worry, I thought I bore some responsibility for the way Ethan turned out. Yet as an adult, he should have been responsible for his own actions. This also applied to Ethan's boss, Parker. Immediately after being discharged, I initiated divorce proceedings against Ethan through a lawyer. With the support of Ethan's parents, we were able to complete the divorce process smoothly. Ethan did not show any sign of remorse until the end.
If only I had communicated about my hospitalization more seriously.
However, he was quickly silenced by his father's sharp rebuke. To me, he was a pitiful figure until the end. Afterwards, I contacted Ethan's workplace's consultation desk to explain the entire series of events in detail. Luckily, a manager higher up than Ethan's direct boss answered the call, and I conveyed the entire situation. Going on a trip with a supervisor is not a problem, but lying about a spouse's death as harassment is unacceptable. This was a statement made from his position as a manager, and it's not something that can be brushed off as mere mischief, right? Or is such mischief tolerated at your company? The manager promised appropriate measures in response to my complaint. As a result, Parker was demoted and transferred to another department. Ethan was also decided to be relocated to a smaller regional office. After the divorce, I returned to my parental home and started to spend peaceful days with my family. Though I had initially struggled for independence when living alone, the return to my childhood home brought a comforting sense of relief. I've found the balance between work and home life, sharing household duties and spending my newfound free time on personal interests. No longer being tossed about by Ethan's whims, I revel in this new freedom. I'm certain that the day will come when I'm ready to marry again. When that time arrives, I'm determined to truly understand the character of my partner before deciding to wed. To reach that point, I remind myself that it's crucial to stay true to who I am first and foremost.